Good morning, Your Honor, respected timekeeper, learned friends and members of the floor. May it please this honorable court, I am Muhammad Aiman Shukri bin Abdul Manaf, appearing as lead counsel for the claimant, Ms. Jazeda. Assisting with me today are my learned co-counsels, Esther, Nordiana, Shazlina, and Hazel. Your Honor, this matter arises from the dismissal of the claimant, Ms. Jazeda, after she refused to comply with an instructions that altered both her employer and her position of employment without her consent. The claimant had faithfully served Jomlepak Sindiran Berhad as a cashier for 17 years. However, in April 2022, she was directed to transfer her employment to Indral Yaman College and to assume the position of a general worker. The claimant did not agree to these changes and subsequently refused the instructions. Following her refusal, the respondent terminated her employment. It is the claimant's case that the dismissal was without just cause or excuse and therefore unlawful under Section 13(1) of the Sabah Labor Ordinance. Your Honor, I shall first address issue 1, namely whether the respondent had the legal right to transfer the claimant to another company without her consent. The claimant respectfully submits that the respondent had no such right. Her contract of employment was entered into solely with Jomlepak Sindiran Berhad. Any transfer to a separate legal entity will amount to a fundamental variation of a contract and cannot be imposed unilaterally without her agreement. For these reasons, the instructions to transfer was unlawful and invalid. Unless I can assist the court further on this issue, I now respectfully invite my learned co-counsel, Esther, to continue with the submissions. Much obliged, Your Honor.
Thank you, my learned co-counsel. Your Honor, I am Esther, the second counsel for claimant. The transfer is unlawful. Jomlepak Sindiran Berhad and Indral Yaman College are separate legal entities. Therefore, a new contract is required. There is no evidence that claimant consented to work under the new company. This is a change to the contract made without agreement, which is not a law. Therefore, the instruction is invalid and the claimant was justified in refusing it.
Your Honor, my name is Nordiana. I will address issue number 2. The question is whether the employer can change the claimant's role without her consent. The claimant was changed from a cashier to a general worker. This is a demotion as it reduced her responsibility, skills, and status. A job position is an important term of employment, especially after 17 years of service. Any major change like this requires the employee's agreement. In this case, the claimant did not agree to the change. Therefore, the respondent did not follow the contract.
It please the court, Your Honor, I am Ina, as the fourth co-counsel appearing on behalf of the claimant, and I will address issue 3. The question is whether the claimant had the right to refuse the instruction. The claimant submits that she has the right to refuse. Under Section 11(3)(e) of the Sabah Labor Ordinance, if the contract does not require an employee to accept transfer, then the employee is not obliged to comply. In this case, there is no clause in the contract requiring the claimant to accept such a transfer. Therefore, the claimant was not required to follow the instruction. The instruction was not valid against a contract, so her refusal was lawful. Thank you.
Your Honor, I'm Hazel, the fifth speaker of the claimant. I will address issue 4 and conclude. The question is whether the dismissal was with just cause or excuse. The claimant submits that it was not. The dismissal was based only on her refusal to follow an unlawful instruction. An employer cannot justify dismissal based on an unlawful act. Therefore, the dismissal is without just cause or excuse under Section 13 sub 1 of the Sabah Labor Ordinance. In conclusion, Your Honor, The respondent acted unlawfully in transferring the claimant and changing her job without consent. The claimant's refusal was justified. We respectfully pray that this honorable court rules in favor of the claimant. Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, Your Honor. May it please this honorable court. I am Muhammad Afif Daniel bin Muhammad Wasli, appearing on behalf of the respondent, Jomle Park Sindrian Berhad. Together with me are co-counsel, Era Natasha, Maswani, Joshua, and Nazrul. The respondent respectfully submit that the claimant dismissal was lawful and supported by just cause and excuse. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the company cafe operation was severely affected, resulting in insufficient work for the claimant as a cashier. Instead of terminating her employment, the company offered her an alternative position within the same corporate group to preserve her job. However, the claimant rejected the transfer and failed to report for duty. The respondent will show that the transfer was made due to genuine operational needs and was a reasonable management decision. Therefore, the claimant refusal to comply with the transfer amounted to insubordination, and the dismissal was justified under the circumstance. My land co-counsel will now address the issue after this honorable court. Much obliged, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I am Era Natasha as the second speaker of respondent. The claimant argued that the transfer was unlawful because Indra Year 1 College is a different company. The respondent respectfully disagreed. The transfer was made due to a genuine operational need during the pandemic. As the material time, the cafe could not operate and therefore could not provide sufficient work from the claimant. Rather than terminating her employment, the respondent found an alternative position within the same corporate group. This decision was made in good faith and for the purpose of preserving employment. The law should encourage employers to save jobs during economic crisis rather than punish them for attempting to do so. The respondent therefore submit that the transfer was reasonable, necessary, and made in the best interest of both the company and the employee. Thank you.
Your Honor, I am Maswani, the third speaker of respondent. Your Honor, the claimant alleges that the transfer amounted to a demotion. The respondent respectfully submits otherwise. The reassignment was not intended to punish or degrade the claimant. It was a temporary operational arrangement made during an unprecedented business crisis. The position of general worker was offered because there was the available role at the receiving company. The purpose was to ensure that the claimant remain employed and continue receiving income despite the closure of the cafe. An employer must have flexibility to allocate work according to operational requirement. The fact that the duties were different does not automatically make the transfer unlawful. What is important is that the company act reasonably and in good faith to preserve employment.
Your Honor, I'm Joshua, the fourth respondent from Jomlai Park Sendirian Berhad. The respondent submit that the claimant refusal was unreasonable. The claimant had served the company for approximately 17 years and was fully aware of the difficulties caused by the pandemic. At that point, the company was attempting to avoid layoff and retain its workforce. A reasonable employee would have reported for duty first and raised concern through the proper channel afterward. Instead, the claimant immediately rejected the instruction. Employment relationships require mutual cooperation. Employee cannot simply discard management instruction whenever they disagree with them. The respondent therefore submit that the claimant refusal was unjustified in the circumstances.
If it please Your Honor, I, Muhammad Nazrul, will address the final issue. The respondent submit that the claimant action amount to the insubordination. The company instructed the claimant to report for the team at the new workplace. Instead, she wrote the word "not" on the transfer letter and failed to report for work. The company then issued a show cause letter, giving her an opportunity to explain her conduct. Despite this, she still did not comply with the instruction. An employment relationship requires employees to follow reasonable direction given by their employer. In this case, the claimant deliberately refused to do so. Therefore, the respondent submit that the termination was a result of the claimant on refusal to obey a management instruction. In conclusion, Your Honor, the respondent act in a good faith and attempt to preserve the claimant employment during a difficult period. The claimant refused the transfer and failed to report for the team. Accordingly, the respondent respectfully submit that the dismissal was justified and that the claimant claim should be dismissed. Much obliged, Your Honor.